All right, everybody. So we're here with talking to the world. You gotta love, you gotta love this technology, right? Being able to broadcast and reach people and learn things, share things. So I'm talking with a friend of mine today, who's also one of my favorite musicians, and his name is Markus Reuter. How you doing, my friend?
Doing very well. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Yeah, lots going on for both of us since the last talk. COVID has
Yeah,
expanded, and your child is walking, and my grandbaby's rolling over.
yes. And you actually had COVID, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was really rough. I still have some forgetfulness and
Mhm.
lack of sense of smell completely, but hey, every day is usually a little better. It takes
Good.
time.
Hmm.
Yeah, and we're just so you know out there, we're gonna be following a stream of consciousness, although that could take us many places. Our intention originally, and I know we'll end up talking about this, is music and movement together in various capacities. You know, movement can be therapeutic, music can be therapeutic, music can uh, help us to move better, movement can help us to hear music maybe differently or better.
Hmm.
And the two things go hand in hand. I tell you, man, it's been so fascinating recently talking with so many people from the music world and the neurology world. This just if we were just to start off and say, when you move, forget about the music for a minute. When you move, your body feeds itself with chemicals and things and hormones that are generated and created in the brain that feed the brain and the nervous system. Movement in and of itself does that for us. It helps to feed us with all these healthy things that create and maintain a healthy nervous system. I just learned about this thing. I think it's called a sea squirt, like a little fish or turtle or
Hmm.
something. When it's born, it just goes across the ocean, and the movement itself keeps that fish alive. And then when it gets to where it's supposed to go, because somehow it's cybernetically programmed to go a certain place on the planet, it finds a rock, it's in the water, and then it attaches to the rock, and that's the last time it ever moves on its own. So then it starts to disintegrate because
Hmm.
it's not moving. It now waits for the water, the current, to bring food to it. And the movement of the water will create some movement against it and keep it alive for a little while. And then it just degenerates and it dies. So the nervous system in that creature in the brain degenerates and then it's dead. And it's interesting. My friend Russ Parker, who lives with Parkinson's and teaches for my company, was talking the other day about. I think about this all the time. Hi, Leonardo's with us. He said he's sorry he's running around the city like a madman. That's okay. No problema, hermano. So, I like my couch a lot. I really like it. But if I sit there too much, I'll sit there too much. So if I start moving, I tend to keep moving. Whatever you do seems to breed more of whatever you do. So those are my initial thoughts. I've been so fascinated with the topic of movement and music together.
Yeah, I can see that. I can hear that. And I think we can take that maybe even a little bit further. But that's just me though, right?
Oh,
Like,
we will.
but
We
but
will.
what I want to say is that really we need to do something. We need to do something, and movement is generally a good starting point to
Yeah.
do something. And that's really where movement is, where you can see the benefit of movement, right? Like being stationary as a human being means you're not getting things done, and or
Yeah.
anything done really. And it's you can also, and we should also transfer that over to the psychological side.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it's have our dreams, right? Like you can dream, you know you can dream up anything, but you need to move to do something that
Yes,
brings you closer to realizing your dream. And
absolutely.
yeah, and that's where I see, like in a more general sense, the importance of movement.
Yeah.
And I know that you are mainly talking about physical movement there, which I agree is very, very important and goes hand in hand with so many things.
Yeah,
Sort of.
that's one type of movement. Yeah. Yeah. But even go ahead, please, because anything you say, I'm going to be eating it up.
Well, it's sort of like the movement is the fuel for our organism to recreate itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, like, the question could also be like I said, yeah, you can have ideas, but if you don't move, if you don't do something, then you won't get results, which is true. But we could also kind of like even go to the level of thoughts, and then ask ourselves, are there specific, or is there a kind of thought that has the quality of a movement?
Mm.
Because I think that is actually the case. And it's not a specific thought, it's the way we communicate, and the way we communicate inside of ourselves, which can
Oh,
can
yeah.
can make things move, or
Mm-hmm.
can make things come to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been sort of like one field of my research and study, and also my teaching, is the movement of one's thoughts. Yeah.
There's a guy whose name escapes me at the moment. He talked about the brain is one thing. There's other people that contradict this. Brain is one thing. It's like an organ. The mind is another.
Mhm.
And brain is an organ, mind is an activity. Maybe, depending
Mhm.
upon how you want to look at it. But I love the fact that although it can be much easier said than done sometimes, that we have the power of free will, and we know we have the power of free will, meaning we can choose to do certain things, and we know we can choose them, certain actions, choose thoughts. I mean, there's brain imaging that came out of MIT a few years ago, and it showed the neural pathways of people who were thinking in let's say a self-deprecating way, no belief in themselves and this and that. I can't tell you anything about what they did other than that at some point in time later, years, and their life had changed and they had changed. They started thinking differently. The imaging of this same person's brain thinking different thoughts in a non self deprecating way, in a, let's say, a forward looking, optimistic way. The neural pathways were different. The brain circuitry had changed.
Mhm.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that doesn't surprise me though.
It doesn't surprise me anymore, but I'll tell you, it surprised me at the time when I
Hmm.
learned of this, which is maybe 3 years
Hmm.
ago.
Hmm.
It was really because this is something I do a lot is I think about neural circuitry in the brain, and it's the one organ that can change itself and rewire based on the power of our free will and the actions we take and the
Hmm.
training we do and the this and the that. If I want to learn to play the touch guitar, which I'm going to be generating a lot of new circuitry in the process,
Yes.
and maybe using some old circuitry in a new way. But it's we're like, I think we might be the only creature that knows that we know anything. Yeah, dog does. They might know they're in the kitchen, but they don't know that they know it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different level. I just love this stuff.
Yeah, it certainly is.
By the way, anyone watching on Zoom, we have a couple people here, Jonas and Soren, and then anyone on Facebook. If you have any questions, Kathleen Keller, how you doing, my friend? My gosh, I haven't seen you probably since your wedding. How you doing? If you have questions, just shoot them at us in the chat box or the Q&A here on Zoom, or comments. I'm watching the feed on Facebook on my page. So yes, hello, glad to see you too. Jonas, do you know Jonas Fresse? I'm sorry if I said it wrong.
I know him.
Okay.
Fraser. Yeah, I know him.
Fraser. Okay, I'm sorry, Jonas. And then Soren Islay. Soren is with us. And so I'll be monitoring questions if you have any or comments. Go for it. So what if so I want to just make sure I talk about this real quick. Markus, you've been doing your own podcast, and you've been putting out a lot of different material, really interesting stuff. I find it, of course, we seem to resonate really well. So anything you pretty much talk about, I'm going to like it. I just know I'm going to find it fascinating. But I love your podcast. Good job.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
guests.
you.
And when you post things like, who should I have as a guest? I don't know, because people you've had are so great. Not that other people aren't great. I'm just trying to think who. I'll keep thinking on that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. And I like these. I started picking up touch guitar lessons, full touch guitar lessons, which is kind of like really very close to what we originally wanted to talk about here, which is music and movement.
Yes.
It's a movement based system that then directly taps into music theory and like creates a physical representation of musical theory on the fretboard, which then is translated to movement. And it's sort of like a holistic way of understanding the inner workings of the musical system that we use in the West, right, in the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's yeah, it's like overall, I have really been, because I studied psychology, and I have not ever really practiced as a psychologist, never called it that way,
Mm-hmm.
but it has been with me like for the last 25 years, and like everything I do is sort of based on the scientific methods that I learned and studied, and my understanding of the history of psychology, which I thought was very important for me to study. Also, like, where does it come from? What were the the worldviews that were present at a specific era, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And so nowadays, I feel like that my work is sort of to bring everything together, to integrate everything. And that is like the knowledge, like I said, the knowledge about psychology, the music, and the movement practice that I've been doing for 30 years now. And yeah, I mean, I have made I think I've made some really deep I found some very, very deep things that I'm starting to pass on to people. And a few do understand what I do, and like you said, like resonate with that maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And others are sort of like curious and don't really yet kind of understand what's going on. And so my decision to finally put this knowledge up on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
right, like unfiltered, and
Yeah.
like also can lead to some sort of public ridicule. But I'm just saying, I think it's important to share one's knowledge, and I don't at this time I feel it's maybe one of the things that we can do in this situation where seems like we're socially distanced,
Yeah.
but really we can get closer together by sharing. And I mean that sounds even a little bit esoteric, but it's very much true, right? We should
Mhm.
share more. And so
I agree.
you
I
agree? I know.
I have a just want to welcome a couple people. Julia's here. Thank you, Julia. And Kevin is here, Kevin Bowman. Thanks for joining us. Um, I didn't make this up myself. I don't know where I heard it, but I heard that somebody say this, and this is how I feel. Knowledge is meant to be not meant to be hoarded, but shared. And it's kind of funny. Is I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here, probably, but I've never been driven by money, which is probably why I don't have much money. But I don't get anything out of it other than some security, which I have enough. I'm lucky. I'm really lucky. I have enough. I'm not against having money at all. However, uh, I've been putting stuff up and just basically giving it away. There are people who need help. I'm not saying that everything needs to be given away. I mean, sometimes you deserve to have, this is a whole subjective thing, but taking lessons, getting counseling, getting anything from an expert. Well, we've paid our dues. We paid a lot of money in a lot of cases to learn what we learn, go through the school, go through the whatever. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with maybe honing in on earning some money with really digging deep on a one-on-one basis or a workshop or whatever. But I could try to sell my stuff, but I was not going to do much of that. Only the really deep stuff that is maybe individualized for a person. And
You
that I brought that up, and I don't know where you are with this, but I have to assume we're in somewhat of a similar spot because you're putting so much stuff out there and you're sharing. So
I have really completely lost my source of income, which is playing live shows, because
yeah,
that was my main job up until 12 months ago.
yeah,
And so I have no choice but to reinvent myself in a way,
hmm
which for me is really like almost more like going back to an older self rather than reinventing or
hmm
inventing something new. Because I've been a teacher. I've had a teacher personality, let's say, or instructor personality all my life. It's
hmm
it's not something that's new to me, but and just like going back to the idea of sharing freely, I think that there's always something like an exchange happening on levels that we're not aware of. And so if a person decides to say, okay, I'm interested in what Markus is teaching, and I happily support him financially, which
hmm
is that transaction. Something there's a channel that's opening up, which is different to the one person that is watching all the videos on YouTube but never actually spends a penny on my stuff, right? and
yes, it's
and I and
absolutely.
and so that's why I'm not really that concerned giving information away, because I believe that the people who get it, let's say,
hmm
they know that they are getting that we're basically have an unspoken deal, which is like, I give, you take, you give, I take,
hmm
right? And I really believe in that. And
Me too. Me too. Welcome, Silvia Gabriela. ¿Cómo está, mi amiga? Estoy, oh boy, practicar mi español. Oi, mejor. I feel much better today. She was asking earlier how I feel. Because, Saturday, okay, different topic for a second. Saturday was this is improper grammar, the sickest I've ever felt on Saturday. I have never felt that sick in my life. I had tested positive a couple days before for COVID. It could have been a false positive. I don't know. It was really bad. And then Sunday, I was on fire. Like everything was great. And I'm moving it ever since Sunday. It's been pretty darn good. So, todos los días, siento mejor. But I don't remember if that's the right way to say every day I feel better. So, thank you, Sylvia. So, I'm with you on this thing. I think what you said is really interesting about transactions or interactions. I should say interactions happening on various levels we may not be aware of. I hadn't thought about that, but it makes sense.
There's occasionally there is something that surprises me. So, for example, because I'm selling my own music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I also have some sort idea sometimes, like like there's one person who buys music all the time, and feel very grateful for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I see the name pop up when I get a payment. Yeah. Okay. So, but there's one person who's always writing the most favorable reviews, and it seems to be a very, very nice man. Okay. So I gave it away. It's a male
It's
person,
a
right?
man.
But a very, very nice man. And but I know for a fact that he's never paid for anything
Mm,
because I offer a lot of music for free.
mm-hmm.
And so I don't really feel bad about that because I'm actually giving it away for free. And so people have the choice to take it, right,
Mm-hmm.
for free. But I'm just kind of it's just I just don't understand though in this situation. Like, how can you be like so in love with what I do? But it's just like like I'm saying, it's sometimes these interactions are kind of mysterious. But I think on the whole, like I'm very satisfied with how people interact with me, also on the level of supporting me financially. So I'm not complaining. I just wanted to give that example that there's
No,
also always the yeah.
I I've been guilty of doing what that man does. Although, well, we have a mutual friend. Actually, we have a mutual friend watching us with us right now, Giovanni Pagano.
Yeah.
Giovanni's here. How you doing, my friend? Uh, a mutual friend of ours. Oh man, I think he might get upset if I say this. So I'll just have to back off of that because it's not fair. Well, I'll talk to you later on that, and then you'll understand. Uh,
Okay.
but it has to do with Leonardo, a very generous man.
Mhm.
So we'll get to that. I'm sorry, I really shouldn't have. I almost forgot we're live, and yet here I am talking with Giovanni. Hey, So yeah, but the other thing too is I'm especially these days being COVID days, when a lot of income for musicians has just been wiped out, and for some, touring and live gigs is their only income. So I had an interesting awakening from a gentleman. His name is George Whitty. He's done a lot of
Mhm.
work with Herbie Hancock and Brecker Brothers, and so we were talking a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of going on the Spotify rant politely, saying how people for $10 a month they're streaming anything they want. I'm not here to say that it's wrong because it's not. It's a choice. I said it's too bad though because Mr. Spotify, as Frank O'Malley calls Spotify, Mr. Spotify, you could sell thousands of CDs and maybe get 10 cents royalty a year later or something. It's ridiculous, right? However, George pointed out that it's great to have Spotify to be able to search and find what you like. But if you find something you like, as I always say, buy it.
Mhm.
Don't just stream it. download it. It's probably $10. Do it if you can, because that money can help somebody to put a meal on the table or something, or half a
Yeah.
meal, or a happy meal. So some kind of meal. You know?
Yeah, I mean, this is really it's become sort of like I have to say that, Carl, kind of like a non-topic for me in a way, because it's just so bizarre. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm in the lucky position where sort of like the people that I've been interacting with for many years, uh, they understand. They
Mhm.
understand that um, what is still being sometimes I can't find the right English words here, but like the media, the mass media still tries to tell us what's cool and what you have to, what kind of t-shirt you have to wear and what kind of music service you should use and stuff like that. And I'm really grateful that most of the people that I interact with are pretty much aware that the mainstream media, um, I first of all, I don't exist there, right?
Mhm.
Even though you can find my music there, but it's
It-
shocking. Like
okay.
it's really shocking. Like the number of people that listen to my music on iTunes versus Bandcamp, which is my main outlet, right? Like
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
it's there's a huge difference. Like, I mean, so people that do know me, they don't even consume iTunes or Spotify. So that's like, why
Mhm.
why should I even care? And yeah.
That's a good point, actually, because I used Spotify years ago when I was teaching group fitness classes at the university,
Mhm,
and I only got it
mhm,
$10 a month because I figured I could put together the perfect playlist with the help of a young person who knew about what music would be good, because I had no freaking clue, for the 20-year-olds to come in for the class. And you know what? It was great.
mhm,
And I haven't used it since. I don't pay for it. Uh, I mean, I have it on my phone. There are podcasts that I'm actually trying to get my podcast uploaded there because it's free to listen
mhm.
to and it's free to do, but I don't know how to do it yet. I just figure I'd reach more people putting something on there so I can trash Spotify and then say I'm going to use them at the same time. Isn't that horrible? What kind of a person
Yeah,
am
but
I?
it doesn't work. Like if you
Okay,
have if you have that attitude, it's not going to work. Nobody's
you're
going to
right. You're
listen to
right.
it on Spotify, and that's even a good thing. Like, but this is the kind of like the trick that that system uses to lure people into the system.
Ah,
So then what happens is that Carl Sterling, well, even though he doesn't support Spotify, right, he will be posting a link to his podcast on Spotify.
mhm.
So those, like, let's say the two people that click on that link,
You're probably
there
right.
is there's like a 3% chance that one of the two people will sign up on Spotify, and that's going to make Spotify money. So that's why we are like the people that are not getting anything from Spotify, the people who make the content. They
Mm,
promote that system, and we're basically the content, and we're the workers for the busy bees for that
oh,
that that kind of service. And that's why I think, as long as you're aware that that's how it works, you can use it. You can post a link, that you're contributing to the wealth of somebody else when you're doing that, right?
mhm.
And not your own wealth. And but I think we need to be aware of these systems that are based on. Uh, I don't have the right words here. What that is.
Well, that's okay. And actually, I'm really glad that you pointed that out because I really didn't know that. I hadn't thought of it. I think there might be one episode of a total of all the interviews I've done, maybe 200 on Spotify. And the effort that it took in. Oh, thank you, Julia. Yeah, I just put up that thing last night of a tune I played in a band called ESP called Reach. Really like that song. That was actually a pretty nice performance at that theater. Julia has said she's been buying lots of CDs, trying to buy directly from musicians' webpage. That's great too.
That's great. Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, you bought my CD too, and you had to wait so long for it that I sent you two because I felt guilty. I really did. Some people ordered like a year in advance, and I thought it'd be out sooner, and it wasn't. So I'm just grateful for your support, Julia. Um, yeah, it's funny, you know. Sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm even thinking. But for example, I've thought of I put the audios of most discussions on SoundCloud.
Hmm.
I pay to be on SoundCloud. The reason I did that is because, and eventually, folks, we will get to music and movement, but uh, we're improvising because we're improvisers. So that syncs up with iTunes. And so now it can be on iTunes. It got to be on iTunes. I have no idea how many people hear things on iTunes that I post, but I know exactly how many hear on SoundCloud, which is the host, and then the RSS feed. I can, you know, put it around to Spotify, all these other places. So, anyways, you know, sometimes I just think it's good to keep it simple. I just do YouTube, and I pay for a YouTube thing so that when I minimize the app and turn the phone screen off, I can still hear.
Yeah.
So it's like $12 a month.
Yeah.
You know what?
I
That's
do
what
this. I do the same.
I
Yeah.
listen to everything. All podcasts that I do listen to are on YouTube, and I don't have to be watching them. Although I will when I can, but I'll listen. So to me, that's like the best option.
Yeah. You know, like YouTube isn't better than uh, you know, than Spotify, right? It's about how can we utilize something for us. That's what it's about. I think everything, if you look behind the scenes, everything's evil. If yeah, YouTube as a right.
They
So
probably are
but
too because it's a Google-owned company, right?
yeah. It's just like the question is like, can we utilize that for doing good for ourselves, doing good for other people.
Right.
And if that's your way of thinking, right? But yeah, music and movement. If you wanna you wanna come back to that.
Yeah, you know, but this is one of the things I love is we're able to bob and weave and go around all kind of different corners with conversation. Uh,
But you see, like we're talking about music in a way, like we're talking about streaming services, and I think the fact that we are allowing ourselves to have an open conversation like this basically is some sort of movement, if that makes any sense, right? Like I really believe that that's movement because
it's
you allow yourself to have opinions, to share opinions, to like I said, to look behind the scenes, to trying to understand what an action that you do generates in the outside world, and um,
absolutely.
yeah,
I think it's actually just had this idea of sharing this to another page I have, but
yeah.
seeing as how I can't seem to figure that out. Tom Hillenbrand is here. Tom, what's up? Tom is a great guitarist. We probably did hundreds of gigs together with two different bands, and it was always smoking and beautiful. Everything. Good to see you, man. One of these days, we got to go out for a run together again. I'm a little better runner than what I was last time we ran together 50 years ago. Okay, 10 years ago or something. So, yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think when I think about what you just said, I think about thinking is really a type of an activity. It's a movement of the
Yeah.
mind. The brain is an
Yes.
organ, the mind is an activity.
Yeah.
I have shown you this before, I'm pretty certain. And if you watch me regularly, you know you know what you're about to see. It's this. I really like
Mhm.
this book. The reason I like this book, even though I've really only read maybe 25 to 30% of it, and not in order, because it's not in, you don't read that book in order. You read it how you need to for what you need to learn. And so the two areas that I'm most interested in out of this book are music and movement disorders. Parkinson's is one of them. And movement and learning disabilities, or what is now called the autism spectrum disorder, which encompasses many things that used to be an individual diagnosis, like Asperger's. So Asperger's is no longer an actual diagnosis, although some people still use it. It doesn't matter. We're humans first. We're whatever, dealing with whatever we live with. And that book goes so much into the scientific uh, explanation of things that happen in the brain because of music, and then what music can do with movement, and movement can do with music and movement together therapeutically, reducing anxiety, reducing symptoms, tremors, stuttering sometimes. Bruce Hornsby stutters, but does he do it when he sings? No. It's amazing. Amazing. So, what are your thoughts on music and movement as therapy? That's a wide open question too, because there's so many different things.
Yeah, it's really, as a practitioner of, like, as a music therapist, right? Like, that's kind of like what I do, but it's hardly ever called that. And that's sort of like what I usually see, or what I would like to see more in this world, is that the activity, the good word, right? Activities are therapeutic, right? And then it's about the way that you kind of like say that fall in love with that activity, that then creates like a cocoon of well-being, right? You cannot prescribe someone movement therapy if that person doesn't at some point start enjoying the activity per se, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so there are these many nested levels of complexity, of psychological complexity, and movement complexity that we can kind of access, right, to get people into some sort of trance. I think that's really what is kind of like one of the main elements in for anything that has the therapeutic effect, is the trance-inducing aspect. And it's funny, like some people that I work with, like the methods, they change from session to session. So, and it's really, and they sort of like I'm just being open to find out in the moment, what does this person need today? Where do we go today? And some people are so incredibly inventive to always have like something new to talk about, or something new, a new angle, or and I think for me as a teacher, and it doesn't really matter what you call it then. Is it music, or is it therapy, or whatever? It doesn't really matter in that moment. And I just go along, and I sort of have this talent to sort of like extract some juice, let's say, from like the 30 minutes of the conversation, and then I find a way to kind of like turn that into an exercise, into, even if it's just a thought experiment, or something like a real activity, like a movement, or right. And it's and then there's other people where it's like this, there's the first session, the first lesson, and we find this one way of working together, and that's not changing for a few years, right? So, and then there's everything in anything in between these two extremes.
Interesting. I'm just going to read a couple comments. Giovanni, I see what you wrote there. And so please know that when I said what I said about ASD, autism spectrum disorder, I'm only going off of what is said by people whose sole job is research in that area. Um, we were talking about Asperger's and autism spectrum disorder and how various things fall within the spectrum of, or the are encompassed by that. So there is a population of doctors quite large that okay, cool, thanks. It makes me feel relieved because Giovanni, I didn't want you to think that I was trying to say anything. Well, I'm no expert. Let's put it that way. I only go from what experts talk about and this and that. The bottom line is, I have a couple interviews I could share with you too, actually, about ASD, which is very interesting with Luigi Bucotto, Dr. Bucotto, and actually a best-selling author, Harvard Medical School professor, NMD, John Rady, wrote some great books. But the bottom line is, we're all humans first. We aren't our diagnosis. We aren't Parkinson's. We aren't cancer.
Yeah.
We aren't. We are people first, and that's actually,
You know,
Go ahead.
I believe it's really important that in certain fields of medicine, it's not required to have a diagnosis in order to heal.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
this is like very important. There is no need to label people with disorders, um, like being not normal, right? What is the norm anyway, right?
I
And
agree. Yeah.
and 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 I think that like even as like the abnormal fulfills a function in society, there's like a certain person that's not mainstream that can do an extreme kind of job, and
Hmm.
I would even count me being a musician as an extreme job in a way. Like it's really it's interesting that um, you don't have to. There's no such thing as a norm. And what I'm trying to say is, yes, while there are more extreme conditions that people can be in, where you can very clearly say, okay, there's this pattern of being unwell present, or um, there is a way, and there is a field where diagnosis is important. But what I'm talking about really is not clinical cases. What I'm talking about is people like you and I, normal people who have a need for exchange of information, exchange of love or touch at a distance, and that's what I'm talking about. And that's really what is the important. It's the glue that holds the society and holds people together. It's
Yeah.
not uh, uh, psychiatries, right? It's that's not what I'm talking about. That's something completely different. I'm talking about just you and I, and I hope that makes sense, but I really believe that should be the focus of somebody who is not in a medical profession. Let's say we can still be there for each other and do good, whatever that means.
I completely understand what you're saying. A friend of mine, his name is Jason, lives with autism. Now, he'll be the first one to tell you I have autism.
Mhm.
That's what he says. And I'm just looking at comments. So I'll read this more in just a minute, Soren. So we spent a lot of time together for years when he was here in Syracuse. I learned so much about learning disabilities, if you will. I don't know the politically correct terminology, but let's see,
Mhm.
autism, other Fragile X syndrome, and this and that. But when it comes down to it, he always brought up some really thought-provoking points and changed my viewpoint, educated me a lot on things like I'll probably go down the political path just for a minute. When Donald Trump wanted to cut funding to a lot of um, places that had entities that offered services for people who could use services, especially learning disabilities, if you will, or autism. Well, uh, it may have, and I don't know, exhibited that Trump thought there was something wrong with them, and there's actually nothing wrong with a person with autism. They're not broken. They're people. They're just not necessarily falling into what society sees as the norm, whatever that is. And then Jason would say to me, "Well, who defined what normal is?" You know, when you said a few minutes ago, but I didn't want to interrupt you. You and I, two normal. I'm not normal. I'm probably the furthest from it. I just try to act like it. No, and I mean that somewhat as a joke. And Giovanni says something here too. I'm going to read that in a second, Giovanni. So it's interesting, you know. I think that the labels are. I can't figure out how necessary they are because you know my daughter, she works with as a teacher in an elementary school. She's working with children with learning disabilities, a lot with some type of autism, whether they're nonverbal to verbal. So she has a really interesting perspective on this as well. But I guess where I'm going with this is partially gone because of my COVID brain, which I discovered yesterday is a lot of inflammation in the brain stem, and probably the spinal fluid is messed up or whatever. But I'll be fine. You know, we're people first, and you're not broken, right?
No,
We're not broken.
no.
I have days where I'm different to deal with. Many less. I've been clinically depressed before 30 years ago. It was really, really, really bad. Was I broken? No. Just needed to change some things in my life, and I did. And I needed guidance, and I got it, and I'm lucky. I felt broken, but I actually wasn't. I was just going through a thing. So let's see what Giovanni says. So there are also those whose purpose is to facilitate communication and expand knowledge and point folks in the right direction versus being actively involved. Ah, yeah, very true. Very true. So when it comes to music, one thing I have found though, there are certain characteristics that tend to go along with, especially, and here I am using a label, a person living with some form or type of autism. Well, literally, the wiring in the brain is a little bit different. And it's not a lot different, but it's enough different that it can cause different issues with sensory hypersensitivity. Maybe sounds, too many sounds will bother them and cause anxiety. Lights that are too bright, too much activity around, and maybe touch. So like if I want to cue and say, let's, just stand up a little straighter when you, no, you have to find out about the person and if they're okay with a light touch or whatever, because touch might be off limits for anybody, autism or not, right? But one thing that seems to come into play that seems to be very, very beneficial is some type of music while we're doing our thing, whatever it is, or creating music. Pair of drumsticks.
Mhm.
Right now, that's all I've got because I don't know how to do anything else. But rhythm. Oh, so was it Anthony Garone that was talking about rhythm in life?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, I love that.
Mhm.
Well, I could go off on that. I won't. But this music has, it does change the chemistry in the brain. It can, and it usually does change chemistry in a way where it's so therapeutic just to have music. Of course, it helps if it's something they like. If they don't like what they're listening to, it can cause great anxiety. But
You
we,
know, it's Carl, it's really a matter also of like maybe even defining what music even is. And I wouldn't want to do that
oh yeah,
really because there you go, like I'm using exercises for people where they count.
hmm
So there's like, and then I'm using like these tricks. So for example, I say, okay, count to 5 at 55 BPM for 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So it's sort of like already inducing some sort of hypnotic state by how I
Yeah.
say it, and that is 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, right? And then you start, and this is movement therapy. You start to count. You're actually moving your mouth system, and you're counting to 5 for 5 minutes. And it's an activity that I would define as musical. And to me, that is musical. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now, and I'm just mentioning that right now because, like, when you're talking about music, you're talking about something like more specifically organized sound, right?
Yes, I
And
was. That's what I was talking about. Yes.
yeah. So I think we need to kind of like just maybe sometimes either be more precise with what we're talking about, or we just assume that any sort of activity that is musical, where I'm this example of counting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't even know what I'm trying to say now, but listening to music, listening to classical music, listening to Bach, listening to Beethoven, or listening to jazz, or sitting down and making a counting exercise is something very different. But it would still be, I would still say that it's music, and music being therapeutic.
Interesting. I'm glad you pointed that out because I've thought of this before, but I wasn't thinking of it right now. An organized music as we know music to be or would define it
Yeah,
normally. But
yeah.
it's interesting because there's a particular waterfall I like to go to, and that's music when I hear the
Mhm.
water. That particular, I mean, any waterfall, but that particular one, you just sit there and it change. I know that it's changing things in my brain, and I'm able to just like all the extraneous chatter going on tends to go away, and then boom.
Mhm.
And my granddaughter has a device which makes all these different sounds, and it's just sound. It's not even music as
Mhm.
we would define it. It could be the sound of white noise.
Mhm.
Immediately, she'll start to go into this, let's say, less active state. Oh, yeah, yeah, water running, Julia. Yeah, even the faucet or the shower, that can be a brain changing, mood changing, uh, change of focus and experience. But this white noise, there are other noises too. It makes I don't know what it is, but I mean my daughter will put that on, and then it only usually when Nora is having a hard time getting to sleep, which doesn't seem to happen that often, but it the what do they call it, the wave, the brain waves, the beta state, the alpha, I don't know
Yeah,
the
yeah,
alpha,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You know, also there we can maybe differentiate between being like consuming sounds like that and
Mhm.
making sounds like that. Okay,
Absolutely.
so because you could be sitting there and doing shh
Hmm.
for a
Hmm.
few minutes, right?
I wonder
Or
if
you can
that's
listen.
hard. I wonder if that's hardwired into us somehow. Like primal instinct is to, it's okay, baby, because I
Yeah.
find myself doing that with her.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Shh. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it makes just like singing lullabies, right?
Right.
Yeah. It works. Yeah. So, but the point being is like talking about music, movement therapy. Okay. So, like the act of like just you could say, okay, I can just try to find something outside of me that has that influence on me. I can again, you can go to the waterfall, or you could say, okay, I'm here and now, and I need the waterfall. So how
Hmm.
can I myself create that waterfall for me. And so my example of the counting exercise is doing something like that, or making for a few
Yeah.
minutes,
Mhm.
right? So, and I think that's sort of like the we could be more sensitive or more even more, better educated as human beings, like to understand that we already have a toolbox. We have a toolbox that's built into us, where, like we said, like intuitively with your granddaughter, you go,
Mhm.
right? So, but why don't we use that for ourselves, right?
That's a
And
good
it's,
question.
yeah, yeah, and so that's where I also see sort of like music therapy or musical education going, where you just teach people to make those sounds, or like you're teaching somebody to execute a specific set of movements, right? You
Mhm.
want those people to make the movements themselves. You don't want them to watch somebody else make those movements, right?
Yeah. Right, right.
Yeah.
I heard what you said, and I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I may look distracted, but I'm looking at a post from I think it's from Soren. I've watched this documentary recently called Alive Inside about how music can heal.
Mhm.
He put a link
Uh,
in there. Also from Jonas, I believe, I love to view all sounds as organized music. All sounds. Some might be slightly differently organized than others.
mhm.
It's all just frequencies. Yeah, or movements. You know, I like. First of all, thanks for sharing that with us, Jonas. I I see that as highly relevant, and you're spot on. Another thing I've thought a lot about recently. Well, actually, it goes back to, let's say. Oh, okay. So he says that yes, that document is about elderly people with Alzheimer. I got to check that out because I have quite a few now I'm working with dementia or Alzheimer's, and I've found many ways to work with them to help cognition, to improve memory to some degree, but it's a learning process that'll never end because there's so much to know.
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Thank you. I was talking with somebody this morning about flow and
Mhm.
rhythm.
Mhm.
And my mom was on watching that, and she remembers when I called her up back in the late 80s and said, Mom, I have these ideas in my head musically. You're in for something new from me. This sort of happened, but it wouldn't have been probably very impressive. Not that that's important, but I wouldn't. The intention behind it was one thing. I don't think I had the facility to make it happen. I'm ready now. But flow and rhythm, the Garone thing, I think I've watched that about 3 or 4 times. Rhythm is so interesting and how we can look at rhythm and different levels of rhythm. Which rhythm? Or how many rhythms within a situation? How do we define rhythm? It's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think the definition of rhythm that I have or use is, so for example, just having a pulse, right? Just the pulse is a rhythm. There
Yeah.
is there is a rhythm doesn't have to be a combination of different subdivisions or note values. A rhythm
Mhm.
can be just simply like your heartbeat, right? It's ideally a constant rhythm, right?
Mhm.
And
Hopefully. Right.
hopefully, but there's this element, and I'm just sharing my knowledge here, okay?
No, that's
That what
cool.
people often forget, it's how many or what kind of events we're assigning to these pulses.
Mm.
That's and why I'm coming back to counting. Counting to 5 means that we have a constant pulse. So the rhythm of when we make an action, when we make a movement, is constant. on top of that constant movement, we have a progression of 5 different words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And so that is already, that's a complex rhythm. Counting to 5, counting to 4, counting to 3, counting to 2, reciting the letters of your name. It's very, very powerful to work with that. And the reason why I say that is that counting a pulse or feeling a pulse is something that's accessible to everyone. You don't have to have a musical education to do that. And then you can learn to kind of like keep in mind a sequence of words. And like the counting is easy because we're used to saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But you could also say, okay, say backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, maybe a little harder. Okay. But then you could go and like your telephone number. And so the movement aspect of that is that we have to access different parts of our brain or mind or whatever to actively retrieve information. And that way we can very easily train, basic activities that would otherwise get lost. Counting exercises are extremely powerful for that.
I'm really glad you brought that up. The name for that is called, when you're counting forwards, counting backwards, phone number, maybe spelling your name or name of anything, or direct recall. I only know this from spending quite a bit of time at Stony Brook University with the neurology team there years ago. And they pointed out that the part of the brain, or the way the brain is that the use is facilitated during that, is a specific type of, like, say, a synaptic firing pattern that can help you to generate new circuitry. And so if we look into another area, and it's primarily cerebellum is what's being activated there. But you could also say something, this is like my mojo. How do you get to your neurologist's office or your favorite restaurant or whatever from here or from your house? You get in the car, you pull out the parking lot, turn left on Weatheridge, turn right on Genesee, 3 blocks down, take a left on Hinsdale, go down the hill, turn right on the highway, get off, 8 miles later, whatever. That's called spatial. Or how do you walk from here to your office when your office is across campus? How many buildings do you cross or walk through? Spatial. That fires up the cerebellum in a different way than direct recall. And there are other ways, there are other domains of cognition as well. But especially doing those things during movement is really good for improving multitask abilities, so that they're in the grocery store and they get sidetracked and distracted. And this could be for anybody, not just a person with Parkinson's. Improving your having what you do in the training follow you out the door into everyday activities of daily living, so that you're better in daily living activities and less chance of falling down, or just improving cognition in general. It's just such a huge arena to be studying and learning about. It's pretty much all I've been studying since the last time we got on and did something like this. So the fact that you're using this is just so cool.
Well, I think there's another factor that we should probably mention here, which I find very important, which is as human beings, the rich world of emotions we have. And I think, again, a counting exercise or a specific movement pattern I think what that does primarily, at least at first, is it helps us dissociate ourselves from our feelings. We're getting distracted in a good way, right, from being focused on how we feel, which in turn makes us, energizes us and motivates us to do more, because we're not being held back, or like our experiencing of the world just for those 5 minutes of counting to 5 is not clouded by how we feel. We don't have enough processing power to feel bad. Right? To have, if we actually concentrate on the movement. I think it's a very important aspect of any sort of train activity that you train, because it just brings you, like people would say, you're more in the here and now, right? But really what that means is that you're not associated so deeply with your emotions when you're taking a 5-mile run. Yeah. And
can you elaborate on that just a little bit? You're onto a path that's really interesting to me, and it's something I'm trying to learn more about. Does
yeah,
that make sense? Like that example you just gave is great. Isn't that retraining your brain? Yes, Julia, retraining your brain, basically. But talk to me more, please.
Yes, I mean, so if we just say, like, we have this black box, right? Our mind. Yeah, I don't even want to call it brain, but like our mind. And like what we can understand, and this has been common knowledge I've learned since maybe in the early 70s, is okay, so how we can sort of like understand what's happening with the black box is that something goes in and something comes out. And so what goes in through our 5 senses. The 5 senses that we know about. So let's only talk about the things that we know, right? So and there is some sort of what comes in kind of like gets sort of stored in a way that, where again we don't know how, if what comes in is really accurately represented inside of us, right? But there we know that there's a representation of an experience inside of us. And then when we communicate with other people, we sort of kind of project that representation out again. And a driving, like, of our 5 senses, and which kind of like makes sense if we look at those, that the emotions are really a driving factor of how we see the world, how the representations that come in, right? The sensory information is being processed. So there's a filter going in, right? And this filter is very much dependent on how we feel. So that's why when you're depressed, the world looks different, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that if we have a tool that can give us a break from being aware of our depression, and even if it's just for 5 seconds, even if it's just for 500 milliseconds, right? We have a chance to retrain our brain and to see that the grass is actually green and not brown, right?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of like, that's just one example. I could give you many examples or many ideas how our senses interact, but sort of dissociating ourselves from our emotions, which again, we are very emotional about our emotions. They're very important to us, right? But just letting go of that for a moment gives us relief and gives us a chance to kind of reassess the world. And so, like, the more of these micro trances that I talked about before, right? Or like these hypnotic states we can get, the better.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I think that's what's like being into sports does. That's what like any sort of hobby, like where we focus, and sort of, it kind of like takes us out of that that world where we're so driven and fed by our own emotions, where everything is being colored and clouded. And
Yeah.
I mean, this can also go in a positive direction. Obviously, I'm just bringing the, you know, that, and that's really yeah, that's
It's a great point. You know, it's still a mystery to me how the emotions, the limbic system ties in with conscious thought and a whole, you know, multitude of other entities we're capable of doing, feeling, thinking, whatever. One of the things, chapter 1 in the new book that I'm writing, which is on hold because of COVID brain, seriously, I'm almost done, is called Hope, Belief, and Empowerment. The reason that I start with that chapter is because since the first book came out, I've learned more and been able to reassess more about some of the things that I've seen in my travels. And by the way, Jonas, I see your comment there, and I'm going to get to that, just so you know. I'm not forgetting you. So, a famous story in my world is my first trip to Monterrey, Mexico 3 years ago in April. I was a keynote speaker at a neurology symposium, Parkinson's symposium. I go up, I got my suit and tie on. I do my 90-minute thing, and there's a translator. Everyone had like earbuds or something so they could hear the translator translating what I said into their ears. He was great too. There's a lady sitting out there, kind of like this, you know, like this guy from United States, just another person. He can't teach me anything. I've been to all of it. I know. I live with Parkinson's, and there's no hope. So when I say this, I'm not giving myself credit. I'm just saying that what actually happened is what I'm going to tell you. So I just teach what I know, but I see in 90 minutes her posture and her disposition and facial expression, they change. She's more open. You can see that physically she's opening up. Arms aren't crossed anymore, and she's curious, leaning forward. Then it comes time for the workout. So I run to this room and get in my sweatpants and t-shirt. Come back in. There's like 55 people, mostly with Parkinson's. I had no idea what kind of workout we were going to do, exercise for Parkinson's, because there's so many categories we can cover. Are we going to do cognition? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? We decided that because the overwhelming comments were that we have trouble when we're on the floor getting up. Okay, well, statistically, well, we're most concerned about falls in the Parkinson's population because very sadly, falls statistically are the number one cause of mortality, not the fall itself, but a complication from it. So
yes.
we want to not fall. So what are you going to do if you fall down? Well, but I want to teach people how not to fall, but that's pretty complicated because that can take, you know, forever. But or it can take 5 minutes, but it just depends upon the person. But one thing we can do is if we fall, hopefully we're able to navigate and use the floor and gravity to our advantage and navigate back to safety. This same lady, I had everybody lay on their backs. There's a point to this too, which had to do with what you said about emotions. She, first of all, she came in. I found out later. I didn't know at that point. Her husband dragged her in there, almost literally. She's there with her husband and her beautiful daughter, Sophie, who, whenever I see Sophie, I'll steal her shoes because that's what we do. I put them in my pockets. You know, she's 7 years old. But anyways, we have a ball. I stay at their house when I go there. Great people. So Ernesto dragged her in. She's on the floor on her back. I look over. She had rolled over, rolled back, rolled over, rolled back. We taught people how to roll because you know it's not uncommon to find a person who can now no longer roll over. So the first thing that happens when they wake up in the morning, the first challenge is rolling over. Can you even imagine that that's your first challenge? Like, I can't roll over, so I can't get out of bed. Well, I look over and she's crying. You go over, you okay? Está bien. Sí, señor, gracias. I found out later that's the first time she rolled over in 5 years without assistance. And she was only 42 at the time. Well, she left there. I was back 2 months later, 4 months later, 6 months later, 3 times the following year, another time. This woman went from feeling defeated and hopeless to optimistic and unstoppable just because she rolled over by herself. That was a pivotal point, and that moved me so deeply. I hope that makes sense. There is a tie-in with movement and emotions. She moved, she rolled, she changed her life. She credits me for giving her life back. I didn't do that. I showed her how to leverage her body to move itself easily. That's it. She did it. Boom. She's the leader of all these great groups now and this and that. She's firing people up, giving them hope, getting hope instilled in people. The movement is just amazing. What one simple doesn't always mean easy, but simple thing, regained ability, let's say, boom, possibilities are endless, it seems.
Yes. I mean, that's why even like chiropractic adjustments, for example, are so incredibly emotional for people. Like you see people crying a lot once the tension is gone, like in their vertebrae, right, or something. And it's there's a lot of like, I would say emotions are even like is stored in non-movement, if that makes any sense. I think like everything, like the trauma, you could say. Trauma is somewhat stored in paralysis, some sort of paralysis. And that's why when you are able to reactivate the movement within the person, the emotional world changes completely.
Very powerful. Another wonderful person just joined us. Adriana Silva Mendoza, ¿cómo está mi amiga? En Chetumal, Mexico. Hola, amiga, ¿cómo está? Good to see you again. I did a workshop in Chetumal. It was amazing. That group was amazing. Thank you. Gracias, Adriana. Another life-changing moment for me, because when I think about the problems I have, I really don't have any compared to other people who are really struggling. It's kind of like my opinion of my problems is just my opinion. The fact around them is I really don't really have any to worry about. Even COVID. Todo cambia. Gracias. Oh, thank you. Oh, I want to, sorry. Jonas says, for question for both of you, maybe, would you consider language as music? Oh, that's a resounding yes for me. Especially when I hear some of the beautiful languages around the world. You've traveled a lot more than I have to a lot more countries. You've heard some beautiful things. It's like sometimes just the language itself is like poetry without trying to be a poet. And or how does language relate to the subject of music and movement? Well, I'm going to direct that to you, Markus, if you don't mind. I'm processing that question right now.
Me too. So, but yeah, I mean, how does language relate to the subject of music and movement? Well, first of all, we can isolate just our system that creates the sounds, like I don't know how it's called in English, larynx or whatever.
Yeah,
like that.
larynx.
And the larynx and the tongue and our jaw, right, and our lips, and it certainly is music. There's no doubt about that. And the movement aspect of like I guess maybe the word that comes to mind is resonance here. So I can say right now, like, you know, the famous word like
I say
and
it pretty often.
yes, beautiful, like the the sound that everything else is based on, you could say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of like makes your body vibrate, and it's a movement that is the core movement of any being that makes a sound. And I would even include inanimate, like what we believe. Some people believe plants to be inanimate, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they're not. They make sounds, and they
Yes.
and yeah, it's that resonance that we can find with our voice that maybe is sort of like the key or keyhole of of finding a way to open ourselves up. And that's so about the word there is resonance and voice, actually voice.
Yeah. Giovanni has a comment here. I enjoy music in foreign languages that I don't understand simply for the sound.
Yeah.
I can relate to that completely. Like in Mexico. Well, I understand quite a bit of Spanish though, but not all of it. I'll never forget the night I was there at a birthday party. Well, staying each place I go, I generally stay at somebody's house. I just so grateful to be accepted as almost like family and all over the country. So we're celebrating Jessica's birthday, and she and her partner. I was at their house. We took from the birthday place back to their house at night. I had to catch a plane at 6 a.m. the next morning, so I went to bed about 11 midnight. Don't you know the mariachi band comes in for a birthday celebration? The mariachi band for about an hour and a half. There's cymbals clanging and drums banging, and I have a bunch of video of that. I didn't understand the words, all of them, but man, the sound was beautiful. It was just beautiful. I didn't really sleep that night, but it didn't matter because I had an experience I would never get anywhere else. It was like sonic candy.
Very sweet.
Hey, you were doing on the Touch Guitar site. There's a video of maybe 10 or or so minutes long, 10 minutes of you doing a demo with the new Touch Guitar, the one that I want to get.
Mm-hmm.
That is beautiful. I had a few technical questions on that, like what are you running it through and what are you doing, but just that sound in itself was I've actually watched that many, many times because it's very relaxing and beautiful to me. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, I mean, if that's kind of like the interesting thing. Like I enjoy music, and I enjoy any kind of music. Like that's some people are like, some musicians also are kind of like more snobbish about what is good or bad, or what
Hmm.
they like and don't like. For me, anything that makes me like, even if it's just a four to the floor kick drum of some like Euro pop song or whatever, I enjoy it, because I see what I see behind music usually. I mean, there are some exceptions, okay, but usually I hear that there's joy, that people were joyful making that music and were excited about creating these sounds, and just like the mariachi band, right?
Yeah.
But and and I think that's what counts, right? It's never about the it's all, like I keep saying, that it's not about the homework, it's about the process. It's you don't have to deliver in order to enjoy.
Mm. Yeah.
And especially when it comes to learning music or making music and the therapeutic, and I really have to say that maybe like the there is a reason why music therapy is also much more needed these days, because music education has been shit for a long time. Has been
Yeah.
trying to tell people how they should play, what sounds they should make, rather than teaching them to become explorers and to feel
Hmm.
free with just finding their own way of interacting with a musical instrument. So there's all this baggage that is being passed on to people, and and it's getting like that baggage is getting heavier and heavier from generation to generation, and
Mm-hmm.
I just find that that is not musical, not musical at all. And things
Oh,
stop moving. If we come back to the to movement, things stop
mhm,
moving. People stop doing things. People stop are not motivated to play a guitar when somebody tells them, "Okay, this is a G chord, this is a C chord." That doesn't inspire movement because it's hard. It's hard.
mhm,
Like and I don't think that learning a musical instrument should start with something that's hard. Should start with something that's fun, something that's sensual,
mhm,
something where you experience the beauty of just caressing the body of a guitar, right? It's
mhm,
not about playing a note. It's more about interacting with the object first,
mhm,
falling in love with the object, and then kind of like maybe you touch the string, and then maybe you play one note and you realize, oh, okay, that's cool, and you let it ring out, and
mhm.
it's that's what's needed in music education, and also that's what in the end music therapy is about, just to allow yourself to actually experience what's going on rather than
Excuse me.
forcing yourself to follow a certain path that others uh, um, have given to you.
Yeah, that's so. I have a question on that in a minute. Meanwhile, though, Adriana says, "La música es muy importante en nuestra rehabilitación." Yes, music is very important and effective, oftentimes in rehabilitation. And I feel like even though I've been doing it for quite some time, that I'm a beginner, man. Even this conversation here has opened up so many ideas. I'm pondering all these things and thinking about what am I going to do next? Because you've pointed out some things that are real interesting to me about even the movement of your jaw, your
Hmm.
lips, your tongue,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
things
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
Um, I said I was going to get. Oh, I do have a question. When you're teaching, let's say lessons, touch guitar, do any of the students who come to you have a lack of or no knowledge of music theory?
Yes. Yeah.
Good, because I need to hire you. Because I don't remember anything about theory other than no parallel fifths in the classical music theory class.
Yeah.
But parallel fifths can be so
Good.
cool sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the power chord, right? The
Yeah,
parallel
right.
fifth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
parallel fifths, or you get points off of your paper.
But there you go. So I would get into storyteller mode and I would tell you, Carl, do you actually know where our 12 notes come from? And do
No.
you know why we usually split them into like just like on the keyboard into 7 and 5. We have 7 white keys and 5 black keys, right? So why is that? And I could tell you this story. It would take 30 minutes that makes you understand what's going on. And you would realize that the interval of the fifth, the one that you just said, no parallel fifth, is actually really the most important interval in everything. It defines everything. Everything comes from that. And it's this, it can be passed on as a story.
Hmm.
And
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, that's really interesting.
And
Man, I
I won't tell you where there are 7 and 5 and like that right now. I won't do that. But there are explanations, and it's not hard to understand. And like Giovanni is one of the people who studied that with me, for example. So
okay.
yeah.
Great. Yeah, we actually spoke last week for the first time, and it was brief, but it was great. So Giovanni, I have to talk again at some point here.
Mhm.
Um, I had another thought, which seems to have escaped me right now. Oh, I was gonna say we need to do this again sooner than later. Part
Yeah.
two, part three, maybe, because I there's so much to this, you know. 'Cause my idea is that I don't want to have the. I'm not sure even the right words to use. I feel like that if I go into traditional music theory, and learn all my scales and chords, which I'm sure it's important. And I remember, if I sit down, I'll probably remember a lot of it with the different modal things and this and that. But I don't want that to define what I do when I get a touch guitar and play,
Yeah.
because I'm really more after the sonic experience than I am the
Yes. Yes.
harmonic experience or the melodic experience.
However, and this is an important point, in order to free yourself from that world of having to fall into that system of accepted harmony, let's say, for
Mm-hmm.
example, you do have to get to the point where you're experiencing all the notes as equal.
Mm.
And that is very hard for somebody who has grown up in a society where we are being bombarded with music, where there is always a very strong bias towards those 7 notes or those 5 notes, but nothing in between, or very little in between.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just saying this, that like in order, and that like we sometimes we have to educate ourselves in order to be free of those realms of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
By ignoring the
Yeah.
information, it doesn't make us crack the code. We kind of like have to take advantage of the fact that we can kind of like acquire again here an
Mm-hmm.
emotion that all the pitches are the same. And if we accept that, then you can start making music freely.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you're expecting to create something that falls into the category of consonants, let's say, and you have no idea where to put your fingers, you're going to be frustrated. So that's why there's always, like with learning a musical instrument, there's always the psychological side of learning to hear anew and differently and more
Mm-hmm.
freely.
Just I had another random thought here. My friend Laura, also in Mexico, who lives with Parkinson's, her artwork will be featured on the front and back covers of my next book. Um, Art is something. No, of course, art. I mean, what is art? There's so many forms of art. But if we just think about taking a paintbrush and doing a stroke on a canvas, let's just start with that,
Yeah.
because that's probably, or I may even just be sketching with a pencil and a sketch pad. I could use the same approach there.
Yeah.
I don't have to try to make anything specific. How much art out there do we see, or sculptures that for some people look beautiful and other people say that's ridiculous, it makes no sense? Well, whatever. It's a form
You know,
of expression.
one of the main arguments that people bring is they say, "Oh, I could do that myself," right?
I'm
But
guilty of that. I've actually said that, yet I wouldn't have thought of whatever the person did. I wouldn't have thought of it.
yeah, or the fact is that you didn't do it. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Good
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
here
That's a
we are,
really
and
good point.
yeah, and this is again, this is movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I would say. So the person who did put that stroke on the canvas actually made a movement, did
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
while you were then criticizing. Let's say you're saying, "Oh, I could have done that," but you didn't do it.
You
So
didn't do it.
yeah. So
That's genius, my friend. I mean,
well, it's
seriously.
not genius. It's
No,
certainly not genius.
but from a perspective or observation point of view, I see that as looking at things for what they really are that I never would have thought of.
Mm.
Like you just opened up a whole bunch of stuff for me, as you always do. It's yeah, there we go. Could have played the note, didn't play the note. Could have done the stroke, didn't do the stroke.
Mm.
Hmm. I better just start doing some strokes and notes. My strokes, my notes.
Yes.
I'm really excited. I'm getting pretty close to this touch guitar thing. Uh, I have a couple other goals I need to accomplish first, but then I'll be able to dive in, and
Wonderful.
I'm going to be taking lessons from you, my friend. If you'll teach
Wonderful.
me,
Yes.
if you'll have me as a student, I would be honored, because it's not just about the notes. You can go and learn all the notes from somebody. But the stuff we're talking about, what you're sharing with me, I don't know anybody who would share like that,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the reasons I love talking with you, these
Mm-hmm.
perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And to look at movement the way you do too. Like every time we talk, it's just amazing to me.
I mean, we haven't really talked about movement, like the kind of movement that I teach much,
Oh.
right? Because it is very physical.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, I'm learning, and you being a drummer, it's super physical and super technical also, or can be super technical, let's say. Um, what I find, and I said that at the very beginning, I like this idea of a holistic approach that brings together all the different facets of making sound,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that includes a big, great chunk of that is movement,
Mm-hmm.
and brings that together in a way that they are proportional to each other. So that a movement I make with my hand translates into an interval that is that I experience as being proportional to my movement. And so bringing these worlds together and creating ways that you can scale a movement to a sound and the other way around, right?
Oh.
And that's really like my main interest, and that's how I teach, is for people to subconsciously understand, for lack of a better word, how the worlds of sound and physical movement correspond.
Wow. Giovanni says, "Hey Carl, get it? A U8.
Yes.
Is that the one I'm looking at?"
Yes, yeah, for sure.
All right, and then you and I, maybe you and I can practice together on Zoom, Giovanni.
Yes.
Seriously. Oh, that's yeah. Wow, man. Certainly is a lot to think about. Yet, another conversation I had recently, just with a friend here in town, not like a Zoom thing, just about thinking and how
Mhm.
that can really mess you up and get in the way instead of feeling. We're human beings, not doings, or maybe we're human feelings, not human thinkings. Feeling is well, feeling is feeling. Thinking can, thinking can muddle so many things. It's necessary, of course, a lot of the time, but not all the time.
But thinking is always colored by feeling.
Hmm. It is, yeah, it sure
And
is.
not necessarily the other way around.
Right.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, I'm kind of relieved to know that I don't have to know much about theory to get started. That's been a restricting factor for me too. I look, and in college I did well. I mean, grade point average wise, it was always really high, not a 4.0, but really, really close. Whatever, it doesn't even matter. But I could do my scales and do these Bach etudes, which in and of its own right was a cool thing to do at the time. I didn't appreciate it back then, but I think I'd appreciate it now. When I think about 12 notes, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
that's a lot of notes. But I'm thinking of it in a way that is restricting me. And I think I need to get out of the note thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll probably come along with learning. Man, I'm going to be 60 in June. I feel like I'm just starting up my life here the past few years. It's really exciting. Granddaughter,
Yes.
post COVID,
Mhm.
thought process, book came out, another book helping people, but really thinking different. It's very exciting.
So there's movement. There's movement in your life.
Very much.
Yes.
Your family's doing okay?
Yes. Everything's good. Yeah.
That's good. Speaking of Sonic Candy, My favorite album of last year is The Music of Our Times.
Yes. Hmm.
I love that one. It's you and Gary Husband.
Hmm.
And you described, or no, Gary also, no, both of you did describe somewhat how that was recorded, which is just so cool. But I use that often to just put myself in a different place. I love it. I have the physical CD. Sometimes well, of course, everything's on my phone now. But I just I love that so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a piece of art. It really is.
Absolutely.
Somebody else could have done it, but nobody else did it.
Yeah, I could have done that. Not, not, no, I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
What were you telling me that, or was it Gary Husband telling me that some of that was captured when I don't know if maybe either of you or both of you didn't know there was recording happening?
Yeah, I captured Gary during sound check, and that became the first piece.
That's great.
Yes.
So, folks who are watching, if you don't have Music of Our Times by Markus Reuter and Gary Husband, just go get it. You're in for a real treat.
Mhm.
I just love it. I can't say enough about that. If I'm still trying to figure out, well, here comes the thinking part. I can allow myself to just take things in and feel, but I'm trying to figure out sometimes why is it that that makes me feel the way I do. I don't ever need to have an answer about it,
Mhm.
but it is fascinating to me. And then in a completely different uh, uh, thing is truce, and
Mhm.
Asaf is on that.
Yes.
And I'm sorry I can't remember who else, but I spoke with him recently. What a beautiful person and perspective. And freedom in music was a real interesting topic with Asaf.
Yes. Yeah, he's
Expression,
the master. He's the master of that.
man. And I know you. I think you guys thinking of doing a second truce maybe later this
Yes.
year. I think Leonardo wants to do September if possible.
Originally we wanted to do that last year
Yeah.
in April or something,
Hmm.
and yeah, it got postponed 3 times already or so. So I really hope that's going to happen. It's sort of like, I have to say, at the moment, the only musical project I'm really interested in doing.
Hmm.
So I hope it's going to happen.
More Sonic candy for us,
Yes.
Leonardo. Come on, make it happen. I know COVID's really caused a lot of delays and problems.
Mm. Mm.
Oh, Malcolm Moore. Do you know Malcolm Moore? You know
Yeah,
Malcolm Moore.
I know
Malcolm
him,
Moore
sure.
just popped on. Hi, Karl and Marcus. Miss you both. I miss you too, brother. It's been years.
Mm. Where
Do you
is he?
still
Where is he now?
Los Angeles area?
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
He moved out there a few years ago. So yeah, it was Dave Castiglione, Jim O'Mahony, Malcolm, and me. Water Street Music Hall, Rochester, opening for Stickmen. And you know what? It's interesting. I talk a little bit with Tony that night. Talk a lot with Pat Mastelato. I didn't get to. I met you, but I didn't talk with you. I'm sorry. I
Hmm.
wish still in LA. Okay. By the way, if you come back to Rochester, man, let me know in advance because I'll come out and see you. We'll go have lunch or something. I'd love to see you again. Fun playing in your band was so much fun, Malcolm. Um, and I was just thinking the other day of all the bands I've ever been involved in where we open, and there've been a lot of them. Nobody has ever helped me set up my drums and take them down except Pat Mastelato.
Hmm.
Oh no, how can I help you? How can I help you? I want to actually I would like to talk with him. I need to send him a note. But
Hmm.
yeah, I saw something. I think you were talking with him and his wife the other day, right? Donna?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that was
Deb. Yeah.
beautiful. I love that. Espresso, yes, sir. We were talking about the cafe creme earlier. By the way, Malcolm, I was talking with Pete Levin the other day. We were talking about the story of you and me going to Tony Levin's house, having espresso, and then going out, coming home with the cafe creme. Did you ever
Mhm.
see that? The Cafe Creme was like a road case on wheels, a big one that had an espresso machine inside it and like pounds and pounds of espresso beans in the bottom. They would actually brew it on stage with King Crimson, I guess,
Mhm.
back in the day.
Mhm.
So cool. We actually, Malcolm, you brought that to Love and Cup one night. I think you rolled it in and did espresso on stage. That was great. So,
Yeah.
um,
So,
what was I?
by the way, Carl,
Yes.
that show that you guys opened for Stickman, I put it up on Bandcamp just a few months ago, I think.
Oh,
So
really?
if you wanna listen to that show again, you can download it. Yeah.
Oh, I'll go there tonight and do that. Yeah, for sure. That's great. I'm glad to know about that. Um, yeah, Pat was like helping me set up my drums, then helping me take them out. You don't have to. Oh no, come on, let me help you. No, we're like, we're drummers, we're brothers. That's what we do. So, oh, okay. You're the only drummer brother I have, I guess. Sort of true, but not true. Drummers are interesting. How drummers seem to get along real well. Just a generalization, but it is
Yes.
interesting. That was fun show.
Yes.
Well, I think I have about 10 minutes before I need to go because it, people coming over here soon,
You
and
know,
so
I can go anytime. It's 20 past midnight here, so
well, I don't want to go. Actually, I'd really love to stay on for another hour or two or three,
yeah.
but this might warrant another one in the near future.
Sure.
We can talk,
Do it.
continue. And
Yes.
so the Soren made a comment. So and the surround sound versions are really therapeutic. Yeah,
He was,
surround sound's pretty cool.
yeah,
Bruce.
truth and music of our time. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I've recently gotten into surround sound more, and I've found a partner in Denmark who helps me. He's loves mixing in surround, and so I'm like slowly going through my archives and sending him the multi tracks of older albums, and he's remixing them into surround sound. And
Hmm.
nowadays, surround sound doesn't have to be on a Blu-ray or a DVD. You can download files that you play with a player, and you connect your computer to your surround sound system just with a cable, with an HDMI cable, and
Oh,
you can
jeez.
play those beautifully spatialized mixes. And yeah, it's not very popular, I have to say, unfortunately, but it's a great thing.
I heard you. I'm just reading what Soren said is I love surround sound because it needs your complete attention. You can't have it in the background. I mean, I suppose you could, but and do
Mhm.
something else, right? Yeah, I would be distracted with that. I've only
Yeah,
experienced it a couple of times, and I was just completely drawn in by the sound.
yeah, it's. I mean, think about it. Like to me, going from mono to stereo, already stereo is already surround.
Hmm.
Think about that because you don't have just one source; you have two speakers, right? But
Hmm.
then imagine like adding another two to go to quadraphonic,
Sure.
and then like this modern systems which have like X number of speakers, and it's beautiful.
So, it makes sense that the mixing for that would be different, but I never really thought of it. Totally
It's
makes
different
sense.
because you can have signals completely discrete. Let's say between
Hmm.
you could have the like the guitar in the rear and the piano in the front,
Ah, yeah,
right? Which would
yeah.
give you a completely different understanding of the music.
Hmm.
It would still be the same music, but you can sit in between it or you can walk through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. By the way, my mom is watching. Hi, mom.
Hi, Carl's mom.
Mom, meet Markus Reuter. He's in Berlin, right?
Yes,
He's in Berlin,
Berlin,
Germany, and
Germany. Yeah.
I have worked. I've seen Marcus on many occasions perform with a band called Stickmen. I'll explain that later. We also did a show where Malcolm Moore, who's also watching right now, is a friend of both Markus and myself, and I was in Malcolm's band, and we were the opening band for Markus' band, and it was just a wonderful experience, a great experience. So I'm talking mostly to my mom here, but it's fun because now we get to talk. We're really talking quite a bit today, and we'll resume in the near future about movement and music and what is it, what can be derived from it, therapeutically, how can it help. That my mom hasn't seen this book yet. Wow, I got to show you this book when I see you. The Handbook of Neurologic Music Therapy. It's really, really, really great when it comes to not that I don't always need evidence for stuff. Just I want to set that straight. Sometimes we need to just create our own evidence. It's very important that we experiment sensibly and let's say safely, but experiment, especially if it's with actual movement. You don't want to fall down and all that. But music as therapy, I mean, the data's in, the research is out. I mean, in and out. The research is here to show us just the beginnings, I think, of benefits that traditional organized music, if you will, can have in a therapeutic sense, including helping people to walk a more symmetrical stride pattern, to move better, to reduce anxiety and stress, no matter who it is, person living with autism, person with Parkinson's, person with Alzheimer's, whatever, humans. But as typical for me, Mom, you know how I am. Got to take it a level deeper or 10 levels deeper. That's why I'm talking with Markus. Because he makes me think. And he's awesome. So yeah, man. Well, I again, I'd really love to stay and chat longer. I need to go in a minute. And I appreciate this so much that you're taking this time again to join me and share all your wisdom and thoughts. It's just every time I talk with you, my head is spinning and it's all good.
Like there's movement again, right?
There it is.
Spinning is movement. Sorry.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Karl, have a great evening, and we'll talk again very soon, I hope.
Yeah, let's talk. I just want to also say thanks, Mom, Malcolm, George Blay, Giovanni, Adriana, Julia, Jorge, Tom, Soren, Jonas, thanks. And there are more too, but they're so far up the feed, it won't let me go, I guess. Thanks for everything, everybody, for watching, joining in, and the comments too, the interaction. I kind of like, that's one of the things I like about these live events is that we can get comments from people and have a little bit of interaction that way. And oh, well, you're welcome, Jonas and Soren. They say thank you. Yeah, we'll do another one soon. And thank you, Markus, again. Appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. Oh, thank you.
All right, my friend. Well, I'll get this up on YouTube probably tonight. Post and tag you and feel free to share. And I can't go without answering another question. Great topic. Is it more about triggering of the brain the right way? Other than training, I'm so sorry, Judge. I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but
we'll talk about it next time.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the next time for sure. All right. Yeah. It's been a long goodbye.
Yes.
I'm sorry, man. I really don't want to go, but I have to. All right. Thanks again, my friend.
Thank you so much, Karl. Yeah.
All right. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Have a fantastic day and night wherever you are. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.